I was just telling Steve, I was wondering if there was going to be a bifecta, I guess you'd call that. That's not as powerful as a tri, obviously, but it's
There's
pretty
only
cool
one
still.
more left to go.
Yeah, but I just cut my hair, so I got to show off the new
It
buzz
is looking
view.
pretty fresh.
Thanks, man. Yeah, Kristen and I do this in my garage now. So
I
Nice.
mean, I've been getting kitchen haircuts for at least 12 years. That's crazy to think, though. I haven't paid for a haircut since 2010.
that is wild.
That sounds about right for me. I mean, mine's easy. I can
Yeah,
do it
yours.
myself at this point.
Yeah, except don't you go through razors and clippers like a motherfucker because your hair is so
man.
coarse?
Yeah, man. It's tough.
Just like grating a potato on your cheek.
Yeah, really. I just I do a straight razor now. It's the only way I can afford it.
It's like, looks like it went through battle after you shave with it.
Yeah,
It's
really.
like all dinged and shitty. Oh my God. So I have a couple of straight razors, but I never got into it because I was always worried that the upkeep and the maintenance and like the sharpening, because like technically you're supposed to have like a specific angle of grind on the blade to maintain the sharpness and not like, slice your face off as you're shaving.
I do the one-time use ones.
Oh, yeah, like a safety razor.
Kind of, yeah.
I see. Okay, yeah. I've been using those for a long time myself. I like them. I mean, it's crazy how somehow we all got sold on like the 17 blade razor, like whatever. It just gives such a shitty shave. Like you get one razor blade and it's so smooth. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
You just got to angle it right so you don't freaking butcher your neck.
Well, that's the cool thing about the safety razor. It's like the way that the head of the razor is it bends the blade to the perfect angle right off the bat. Like there's no guesswork to it.
I can't say that I've ever used it then.
Oh my God, bro. I know what I'm getting you for your birthday next year. It's life-changing. Yeah, so Johnny, as you joined, first of all, we're already a little bit behind.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I was just gonna say, like, are we all on a schedule? Like, should we be rushing? Because I'm not sure. I feel like I have a lot that I want to cover. I don't know about you guys, but
No, I'm not on a schedule. I just wanted to get the boy down before we started recording, because if he starts like fussing, then it's going to affect the recording. So I just wanted to make sure he was down before.
Oh, okay.
I'll pull the trigger.
The blade is disposable, and then you reload it. Steve, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So this part here, can you see my mouse? This here opens up, and you chuck one of these in there, and you just use it one time and throw it away.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Johnny, you came in right as Steve was like, hey, should we start a distillery? So and obviously the answer is yes.
Yeah.
All right. So listeners and viewers, write into ofstrongsteel@gmail.com. Tell us what we should name our distillery. The most un-PC thing possible is the correct answer to this question. So let's all wait for some good submissions.
Whiskey Dickin.
That's
triggering.
A lot of that one?
Yeah. Yeah. A friend of mine suggested it. Not me, though. Definitely
not personal experience.
So shall we do some introductions, starting with the man in the middle there?
Is that me?
You're in the middle, Benny.
Am I really?
These days we'll get this.
No, we won't. Never. It is a tenet of our Constitution as of Strong Steel that we will never know how to introduce ourselves on this show. That is our promise to you, the viewer and listener.
All right.
That sounds like I bet on.
The guy with the hat. Go ahead.
That's fine. Steve, absolute train wreck. Thanks for joining the show.
Joe Nathan, or the angle of the dangle increases with the heat of the meat.
My name is Ben Tomzak, and I realized in the course of reviewing and editing that we spend so much time talking about the whiskey they're drinking, and I refuse to do that anymore, which is why I want to tell you guys about this delicious Roku Japanese gin, which is made with 6 Japanese botanicals, including sakura leaf and sakura blossom and yuzu peel. 2 types of different teas. We've got a sencha, gyokuro, and then sancho pepper. This tastes exactly like Tanqueray, so I don't know. It's like brilliant marketing or whatever, but I actually quite like Tanqueray, so that's fine with me. But the bottle is really cool. I don't know if you guys can see this. The bottle is embossed with the different botanicals that are supposedly in this Japanese gin. And because it's Roku, which means 6 in Japanese, it is a, what's the geometric word for this? Anyway, hexagonal, right?
Yeah, hexagon.
Yeah. So anyway, no more whiskey talk from me. What are you guys drinking tonight? Steve, you got like a pina colada, I suppose?
Publix brand one. I'm gonna go
got
pour
this.
myself something.
Delicious Oli Pop here.
Oh, another Oli Pop. Okay. For gut health. I'm gonna, Steve, if you want to excuse yourself to get a beverage, I'll edit this out
You
because
drink that swell? Olipop.
Oh,
pretty
dude,
good.
they're fucking great. I got the root beer kind. It tastes just like Bark's root beer.
Johnny let me drink a cream soda the last time I was visiting. It was pretty nice, actually. And
Yeah,
I pooped for days afterward.
yeah. I was gonna say, it keeps you regular.
Am I the weird one here?
Just take like a whole box of bran flakes, consolidate it into one fucking delicious beverage, and you got
Doesn't
Oli
that
Pop.
sound good?
Yeah.
Oh my god. So Johnny, you literally beat your son until he fell asleep. And
Yes.
yeah,
I beat him every day.
Yeah.
Until
Until
he
he
falls in
passes
line
out.
and does what I want him to do. So, I'd say the shaping is actually working out pretty good because
That's good.
What about you?
Kristen doesn't let me do any of that, unfortunately. I live in this weird house where like my wife is the boss. I don't know.
How's
It
the
works.
didn't you say that shit? I got fucking crazy thunder right now.
Yeah.
Is she breastfeeding?
Yep.
So is that like all that happens in the middle of the night when the baby wakes up? There's a latch.
She's gotten to the point where I've started doing shifts where from like 9 or 10 until like between 1 and 3 in the morning, I basically got baby duty, but she's basically sleeping most of that time. Like I give her a bottle at 9 or 10. She basically, like, I might have to, helicopter her around until the blood rushes into her head and she passes out, or that doesn't always work, but most of the time that works. And then she sleeps until like 2 or 3 in the morning. And then I hand her back off, and then like breastfeeding every couple hours. She's getting to the point where like at night she only needs like 1 or 2 feedings, and then she could sleep in between, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Ronan started doing this thing like a month ago where he started blowing raspberries. He did it for like 3 days and then stopped. And now like this week, it's like he's rediscovered it again. And it's just egregiously aggressive. He's like just blowing like spit all in my face when I'm trying to. So it's awesome. Steve, did your kids ever do that?
Yeah. And actually, raspberries were something that I'd forgotten about for like 25 years, and then my kids started doing it, and it brought me back to life. Amazing how kids will do that to you.
That's wicked funny.
As far as making kids fall asleep, I don't know if I told you guys this, but like one of the only ways I used to be able to get Haley to sleep is to walk around circles in the kitchen. I'd do this for like an hour, and I'd just play Deftones. She loved it.
It's solid.
Little White Pony, or
yeah, White Pony particularly, but all of it. The droning, she was all about it.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I left the fridge open. I'm a trend.
That's what it says. So, Johnny, do you want to do like an over/under on whether or not Steve poured himself a bullet?
Not gonna take that bet.
Ah!
What year is that?
Good call. That is a Caribbean reserve.
What?
They finish it in
like rum casks
in a Jamaican urinal.
Yeah, right. Same thing.
That actually sounds delightful.
It's really good.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not usually a fan of rum, but this is really good.
I was gonna say rum is like poison unless you're in college where you can like tolerate it for some reason. But anyway, so why don't we jump in? That's good. We've done all of our normal stuff, probably because this is a show based on tradition. Nobody looked at the outline, which is good because now I can just sort of domineer the episode as usual, unless
I did look at the outline.
I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. So there was a bunch of stuff that we had like a really discussion heavy episode last time, and we touched on a lot of different subjects. I was kind of all over the place because I think I was sleep deprived and I couldn't sort of like form coherent thoughts, which was really frustrating. I was able to edit a lot of the nonsense that I was saying out. So, I want to be clear. This is an adulterated podcast. Like, it is not authentic or true or consistent in any respect. But did you guys have any follow-up thoughts? Because I wanted to touch on a couple of things, and then we can sort of move on to the debate because, again, I think we have a lot to get to.
Well, I'm sure you edited out your nonsense, but you left mine in, right?
You didn't watch the episode, I guess. If we don't smell our own farts, how are we going to expect other people to smell our farts? Well, no, I think you guys were great. And maybe I'm just being a little self-critical, but I really did feel like I got into a few weird meandering tangents. But if there's nothing else you guys wanted to round back on, this is really frustrating because I wrote in the outline as I thought of it. that we should revisit, Johnny, your point about majority rules conflicting with, monarchic history and dictatorship history in Europe. But I didn't explain what I thought we should revisit specifically. So I think that might be a dead end, unfortunately.
I mean, I must have been in a sleep-deprived haze too, because I don't remember saying anything about that.
It was a really good point. We were looking at the poster from the Smithsonian that was aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture. And you noted that one of the points on there, which is that majority rules, quote unquote, is an aspect and assumption of white culture, is actually quite ahistorical, not just for white Europeans, but I mean, the whole world generally. And that throughout most of human history, there's been, whether you want to call it a despot or not, one person or a handful of people at the top of a governmental structure that has basically imposed rule on the majority population. So, I mean, we didn't get into this, but that poster was actually from, I think she was a radical feminist named Judith Katz. And it was from a book that she wrote. And so that aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture was just taken whole cloth from Judith Katz in her work. And so, I thought maybe it might be worthwhile to talk about it in context. But, one of the things we try to do on the show is to give a fair shake to ideas, even if we disagree with them. And so I thought it might be worth talking about the sort of conceit, I think, right? Like I'm trying to sort of inhabit what I think Judith Katz was trying to express. But I think what she was saying was that there are these ideas, obviously demonstrably false ideas. So like she was either grinding an axe or was just an idiot, because a lot of what she put on that poster was afactual. But she was trying to express that in American culture, Western culture generally, but I think specifically American culture, her contention is that we are possessed of white ideas and white standards, and that might disadvantage people who are not from that specific background. Johnny, I think you did a good job of laying out that that's obviously wrong. Steve, you had a bunch of great points too. I mean, we just went through the list and we picked out a bunch of things that were especially stupid. But remember, Johnny, in college, we took a music cultures class together,
music cultures
I think.
Of the world.
Yeah, and the professor was Jones Bauman, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, holy crap, you nailed that one.
Like, I hadn't thought about it until I was looking back at our last round and thinking about this. And one of the things that I was thinking about was like, who would not want Western medicine, right? Like you can go to CVS or whatever your pharmacy is, you can get dick pills or, blood thinner for your, constricted arteries, whatever it is, anything. And it's all there. And like, it's going to help you with your problem, right? But one of the things, like the reason I could remember the name of that specific professor from 20-ish years ago, right?
Yeah, 22 years ago.
2 years ago is because I thought that was a super impactful class. And one of the things that we learned in that class was that like some guy in the jungle in Africa who's never seen a white person in his life can take a branch and shake the leaves over you and sing, and like your gallstones go away or whatever, right? And it actually works sometimes. And so I was trying to give a little bit of credit to this idea that like obviously we think it's important to be self-reliant, and we think that it's important to have a nuclear family. I think I just said the George W. Bush nuclear family. We all want to. What were some of the other ones? I mean, like, be on time or whatever. By the way, Johnny, I appreciate that you internalized your anti-whiteness by being late for our podcast tonight. So good job on you.
I mean, I'm really just trying to get into this role here, and
I love it.
Trying to explore the left side.
So, but the thing that I wanted to ask you guys is like, what if there are other cultures that could be equally as successful? And I'm not saying there are, right? I just want to be clear. I think demonstrably there kind of aren't, because otherwise they would be supreme. But are there other cultures that could, like, do we want to give credit to Judith Katz and what she was trying to express, or do we want to just say that this is stupid and to be dismissed out of hand?
Well, no, there's got to be some value in there. I'm trying to think to myself I mean, the Japanese are super successful. I think we have a lot in common with them, though, and you would know more than I would on that.
I only literally know about Rokujin. That's the extent of my knowledge of Japan.
No, come on, give yourself a little more credit than that. You were there for some time. I mean, I think punctuality, that's probably nuclear family. I don't know. What's the nuclear family like over there? Is it pretty typical, same as over here? They're clearly not have as many kids as we are.
Yeah, that's the complicating part of this question. The last time we talked about this, there's a demographic crisis, which is worse in Eastern Asia than basically anywhere else in the world at this point. But other than that, I think you're right. Like there's a lot of similarities between quote unquote Western white culture and Far Eastern culture.
I mean, I might throw into that the Chinese, even as a super communist society, are pretty successful.
Yeah.
So I guess you can accomplish a lot with a whip and 2.5 billion people, right?
I mean, I would say that like there's successful parts of many cultures over there, but I think that when you like the best is going to be the one that rises at the top, right? So like when you have ideas out there, you know what I mean? You put ideas out into the ether, and the best idea is the one that kind of comes to the top, or things like that. So I think that we can say that Western cultures or like white culture has a lot of really successful stuff, but I think kind of along the lines of what Steve said, that you're going to find, I think, more similarities than differences in a lot of different places if you look hard enough. So I don't know.
I mean, is there a chance that American culture is predominant in the world because we have the most nukes to back it up?
I don't think so, because we were essentially born from Scottish Enlightenment DNA. So like a lot of what we consider to be American values is actually just what we cribbed from the very specific portion of Europe that formed the American colonies when we revolted, right? The nukes came later, but I think America was already a supreme power on the world stage before we developed nuclear technology.
Sure. Well, our empire hasn't lasted nearly as long as, say, the Roman Empire.
Yeah, yet. I mean, we haven't had the chance to. I mean, maybe we could assume that it's not going to. I think that's probably a pretty good assumption to make. But that might not even be a consequence of our values per se. That might be complicated by globalization, which didn't exist in Roman times. I mean, it's a very complicated question.
Sure. Well, that was globalization at the
Yeah,
time.
I was gonna say. I mean, to that extent, at that time, I would say that they came as close to modern day globalization as you can get without airplanes and boats and things.
I mean, instantaneous transactions, from across the world. I mean, it's a pretty different animal. I mean, we're talking about alien species comparing.
Well, sure. I mean, to them, they would be an alien species to like the Mongols, right?
Yeah, right. But the Mongols had arguably an even greater presence in a larger portion of the world than the Romans did. So, again,
Sure.
I think we can't remove this conversation or this question from time and current technology. But it's worth considering. I think it's a good point. I don't know. Do you think that's true, Steve? Do you think it's our nuclear arsenal that makes us the global hegemon?
Yeah, I think that's probably undeniable. Yeah.
The factor or a factor?
Yeah, no, I think having Raytheon is a big plus.
Again, you're being vague. Is it a plus or is it the factor?
Forcing our power on the entire world? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know. Are there other countries that is it so great to go to CVS and get pilled out? I don't know. Is that so great?
I'm not even saying it is technically. I guess what I was saying is, there are other. I was using that as a framework to compare, African. God, Johnny, what's the word?
Shamanism or something like that.
Shamanism. Thank you. Yes, exactly. As an example, like as a comparison, right? So again, there are pros and cons. Like shaking a bunch of leaves over me is a lot cheaper than buying I have terrible eczema in my hands all of a sudden over the past couple of years, because like I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but once the odometer rolls over year 40, like everything in your body starts breaking down. So now I have to use like special hand cream just on my right hand, and it's like $1,600 a tube. Like obviously I don't pay that, right? Because like it's discounted and I have health insurance and all the other like bullshit. But I could just go and get a branch from a tree and just shake leaves over you, and that doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
It's pros and cons, right?
I guess to that, what does quality of life constitute, right? I mean, is it so great having a country with like 200 million people that just they're overweight and they go to Arby's all the time and Walmart? I mean, is that better than shaking sticks over you? I don't know.
I think those guys shaking sticks, given the opportunity to freaking just gorge themselves into oblivion on Arby's, would probably do it given the chance. They just don't know that that's a life or an option. They'd even exist.
Yeah, I mean, anybody's going to take the easy way out. I don't know if that's a better quality of life, though. And there's something in between, right? I mean, there's something in between shaking leaves over somebody and going to Arby's all the time.
Being dependent on what is it now, like the diabetes drugs to control weight loss and everything.
Yeah, or Ozempic.
Ozempic, yeah, or like Manjaro or whatever.
So like, I don't know, is that a great society? Probably not. Right?
I was playing a little bit devil's advocate by posing this question, but I'm going to tell you guys a quick story. I saw a documentary one time, and it was about the lifestyle and living conditions of a small sub-Saharan village in Africa. And they were dependent on cattle for their subsistence. But
is this the Maasai?
It could have been. It could have been.
Are they like nomadic?
I don't believe they were nomadic, because they had established like homesteads where they were raising livestock, but this wasn't cattle like we would think of it in a Western context, like, big, like healthy beef cattle or
No, they're
whatever.
like skin and bone.
This is like a skin and bone, like skin literally falling off of the animal, like cow. And like it was just for milk, basically. But the craziest thing was like this documentary was following this little boy. He must have been like 7 or 8 years old. And his job in the village was to go up and with his mouth blow raspberries on the vagina of the milk cow because it would stimulate milk production. And I'm like, sign me up for CVS, please. I'll take that. Thank you so much. So children giving oral sex to cows for subsistence, or like Big Macs.
Point taken.
That's all you ever knew. I mean, it probably wasn't that bad.
Yeah, again, I'm projecting my Western, like, what do you call it? My Western, oh my God, my brain is...
Your white privilege is showing, right?
My white privilege. My Western sensibilities are being projected right now. But the point is that we're in a cycle, right? Like, I think it's very easy in any given moment for the society that's on top to be like, oh, we have the best society. Like, this is the shit that works, obviously. But I mean, like, wouldn't that be the dominant world culture if that was the valid, like the most effective, the most potent, the most powerful way to organize your society? I tend to think that that has something to do with it. And maybe that does go to your point, Steve, about the nuclear arsenal. Maybe that's a factor too. Or maybe that's just a marker, right? Like a powerful society is going to have a nuclear arsenal.
Well, I think if you take nukes out of the equation, but like, I would think that just off the top of my head, I mean, just thinking about any major society or culture that existed had a very strong military to be able to enforce the beliefs on, other people. I don't know. So I think nukes, I think Steve's kind of right. Like, nukes are like, the king of the hill, as they say, in terms of military might, but
Yep.
if you look at cultures gone by, I mean, they always had a strong military.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel as though to draw it back into what we had been discussing, the diversity question, and specifically about the aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture. That's a really good point, Johnny, because apparently it's a tenet of white culture that there should be respect for authority, organization, an eye toward the future rather than the present. These are all things that factor into military readiness and the discipline that it takes to have a powerful standing military force. So, I think, once again, this is a point that disproves the whole poster. Every successful civilization has a ready standing military that's powerful and well trained. So maybe we can put a period at the end of this sentence and move on.
Should be fine.
Unless you guys had any other expressions you wanted to make.
No, I think I'm good.
So typically a round down is supposed to be 10 minutes according to our outline. We've had a couple of other shim-shams in between, but we're at 35 minutes. So maybe this is a good time to jump into the debate if we're ready.
Ready as I'll ever be.
Mr. Moderator.
Right, so tonight looks like the debate is going to be the topic CRT is not in schools. This is going to be Steve on the left, Ben attacking on the right. So with that in mind, I'm going to open this up for opening statements, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion.
So as to CRT being in schools, I assume, just so we're clear, we're talking K through 12. We're not talking college.
Yeah, that exactly. Yep, you're right.
Okay. I mean, I'll keep this pretty quick. CRT is at least a college level course. Students K through 12 don't have the capacity to understand it. What we've been calling CRT being in schools is really just a catch-all for any kind of race talk, segregation, things like this. We relabel it CRT to get conservatives in particular whipped up into a frenzy over it. And I think there's probably a deeper meaning behind that. We can get into it if you like. CRT is college level courses, but it's not suitable for anyone below high school. It's been unfairly, other things have been unfairly characterized as being CRT. Off to you.
As one might have expected, Steve's position, in true representation of the progressive position generally, is to try to narrow the definition of CRT down to something so extraordinarily specific that it could never be considered to be anywhere else except inside a college level, maybe even an advanced college level legal course. But of course, that's ridiculous. In the same way that math describes advanced calculus, for example, Math also describes the simple addition of subtraction schoolwork that your first grader does. Okay. This is the same with CRT. CRT is an extraordinarily broad umbrella based on critical cultural Marxist theory developed from the 60s through the 80s and 90s that was basically blanketed across all kinds of disciplines. Today, we're specifically talking about education, but yes, it existed in legal studies. Yes, it has existed in social studies. And yes, it has filtered down even to grade school, middle school, high school. I've got plenty of examples of when this has happened. We can spend time today, if we want to, talking about what it is that constitutes critical race theory, who the major players in its development and proliferation have been, and we will. And Steve, I'm sorry, but we're about to just flambe you, my friend. all I can say is that, I want to dispel immediately, if nothing else is drawn from this conversation today, from this debate, CRT is not a college level course. It's fine if you want to say, hey, there's a college level course called critical race theory. Yeah, fine. Critical race theory is the umbrella under which ideas about race, society, and power dynamics exist, and it is broadly applicable to a number of disciplines. In fact, it is the point that it is supposed to be broadly applicable. And meanwhile, we get to do this fun little sleight of hand where we say, no, CRT is just a legal coursework. That's not what we're talking about when we're having children line up based on their racial privilege in your third grade classroom. No, don't look at that. Critical race theory is something so specific as to be dismissed. We're going to talk about it, but I just want to dispel the idea that CRT applies only to complex legal coursework. It's simply not the case.
Yeah, I was going to ask both you guys to if you could define, like what CRT is, like on right and left sides. So Steve, what do you define CRT as?
CRT to me, and though it doesn't sound like Ben is accepting that this is a college level course, though it quite clearly is. There's any number of things that are components to CRT. Systemic racism, race as a social construct, intersectionality, race permanence, things like this. These aren't things that your average high school person can even grasp. What I think we're calling CRT are just building blocks to it, right? Like we teach our kids to wash their hands after going to the bathroom. We're not teaching them microbiology, right? Just get rid of your germs. It's a building block toward something that probably a lot of teachers think is important, and it probably is, but they're merely building blocks. Anything we're calling CRT in middle school, high school, second grade, whatever it is, sure, they're building blocks, but they are important. I mean, race and racism are real things. Kids can't grasp intersectionality even if you tried. So I'm not sure. I mean, what exactly are you talking about when you say CRTs in schools?
You've articulated this in such a way that you've backfooted me a little bit. So well done. But what I would say is that if we understand the history of this concept that we call CRT, it's very easy to see that what you describe as building blocks are simply fundamental tenets of critical race theory that are being applied to schools. I'm not sure if it's appropriate now to get into examples. Moderator, would you rather that I go ahead and give my definition first?
I was going to ask you of some examples that you're saying are like the tenets are.
Yeah. So let me start by addressing your first question, which was the definition. I don't know how to better do it than by allowing the coiner of the term critical race theory to explain it in her own words when she said, and by the way, this is Kimberly Crenshaw. Steve, you referenced intersectionality. Kimberly Crenshaw was also the developer of the concept of intersectionality. Critical race theory is a practice, a way of seeing how the fiction of race has been transformed into concrete racial inequities. Quote, critical race theory is a practice, unquote. There's nothing about that implies that it is college level coursework. Okay. It is a worldview. Any worldview can be broadcast or refined or propagated down into any level of education you want, and it has been done. So, moderator, is that a satisfactory definition for now? And should I move into some?
I can understand where both you guys are coming from. I just didn't know if you could provide some examples.
Yeah, happy to. How many would you like?
Why don't you give a couple and just kind of see where these examples are to the extent they are in education system.
So although I would imagine, and I am speculating, but I don't think this is a very far leap to make, that critical race theory in schools has been in place much longer than what I'm about to cite The extraordinary concentration of examples is post George Floyd, i.e. 2020. And so everything I'm going to be referencing is from within the past 5 years. Buffalo, New York, in 2020. Buffalo Public Schools implemented a Black Lives Matter. We can go into how that's linked to critical race theory if we want to later. But they implemented a BLM curriculum for grades 2 through 4, which included lesson plans asking students to explore the essential question, what is Black Lives Matter movement and what is our role in it? Another lesson was, do Black Lives Matter in America, aimed at helping students understand the need for the Black Lives Matter movement. The curriculum framed American education as a tool to recruit students into BLM activism, emphasizing systematic racism as a core issue. By the way, systematic racism is a core tenet of the worldview of Kimberly Crenshaw and others, i.e. critical race theory. That's just one example, I realize, but maybe Steve wants a chance to hack at that.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm hearing are exactly what I described. I mean, they're building blocks, right? Asking students to be aware of Black culture if they're not formally exposed to it, particularly Buffalo, New York. I mean, getting kids to think about race is not the same as intersectionality. I mean, that's just trying to be kind to people who think differently than you, as far as I can tell.
That's fine, but that's like saying trigonometry is not the same as algebra, but they're both math.
Well, it's
and
not.
What we're talking about is math.
Right. Well, I'm teaching my child right now multiplication. I'm not teaching her trigonometry, right? I mean, it's not the same thing, right? We teach, like I said, we teach them to wash their hands, right, because of germs. That's not microbiology. It's a building block toward it, if you want it to go that way. But I mean, you should have basic fundamental understandings of most things in life, and I think racism is an important one.
I really quite like your hand washing analogy, but you keep describing these as building blocks, and so the obvious question is building blocks toward what?
Well, you can stop there, right? Like, I know multiplication, I don't know trigonometry, right? But you should have at least a fundamental understanding of just about anything in life with any value, right? I mean, you should understand nutrition. It doesn't make you a nutritionist.
Yeah, certainly, but it is to say that you are learning nutrition.
Well, right, but you're not taking a class in nutrition, right? I mean, you're understanding basic elements of life.
Yeah, again, to use her own words, Kimberly Crenshaw does not say that critical race theory is a class or a course. It is a worldview.
Right, but we're talking about school, right? So that's how we're breaking it out. Is it being taught?
But you're saying that these are building blocks, right? So they're building blocks of what is my point? They're building blocks of critical race theory, ergo critical race theory is in school.
Well, all right, then I guess my child knows trigonometry because she knows multiplication and she's 7. So it's the same thing, right?
Trigonometry is not the umbrella that we're speaking about. If we're using this analogy about math itself is the umbrella. Trigonometry is a subset of math. So is multiplication.
So, Benny, I think that's
I'm confused. What you're equating this to is CRT in schools is the same as math is in schools.
In a sense, yes.
Well, I don't know how to flush that.
John Boy?
I was going to say, I think what Steve was trying to say is that the blocks are maybe some form of having a well-rounded education. And what you're saying is you need to be cognizant of certain things that, like race is a part of life and it needs to be spoken about with kids so they understand what it is and being educated about that subject. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, I mean, a kid should know fundamentals of everything in life, right? I mean, there's plenty of things we don't teach them in school that we should be, right? Like how to balance a checkbook, how to do your taxes, how to use Excel.
So, Benny, does it go beyond what you were saying about Black Lives Matter? Because Black Lives Matter to me seems like that's a movement and not necessarily education. In a sense, I don't know. I mean, because you can be informed about organizations and things that are going around in the world, but does that necessarily mean it's a form of education right there? Can you give me any other examples where some of this stuff might be in the education system?
Well, this was specifically in the Buffalo school system. It was in Buffalo Public Schools, grades 2 through 4, and broader. But if that's not enough to answer your question, maybe it would be valuable to drill down on the BLM aspect of the example I provided. By the way, I've got other examples on deck, but Black Lives Matter is a fundamentally Marxist organization and movement, and there are multiple ways that we can demonstrate that, but perhaps the most powerful is that one of the founding members, whose name is Patrisse Cullors, you guys probably remember this from the news, in 2020 explicitly stated on stage in an interview that she was a trained Marxist. Actually, her exact words were, "We are trained Marxists." And she was referring to herself and other founding members of the Black Lives Matter movement. From Marx, we can draw a direct line down to Herbert Marcuse, who was a disciple, an acolyte of Marx, who was from the Frankfurt School. Are you guys familiar with the Frankfurt School, by the way?
I am.
In American English, we might refer to it as the hot dog school, but it was from hot dog Germany, where they were studying Marxist theory and trying to devise devious ways to cause its proliferation. Herbert Marcuse came to the United States and was active in California, primarily in the 60s, but on into later years as well. One of his, I say primary because maybe she was the most notorious disciple of his, was Angela Davis, a radical Black feminist, who led to the work of Kimberly Crenshaw, who went on to establish critical race theory, from which Black Lives Matter was explicitly derived. So there's an extraordinarily straight through line from CRT to Marxism. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because when they say BLM is being taught in schools, on the spectrum that starts with CRT and goes to BLM, you've got CRT right here in the middle. So that's a very clear example. But Johnny, to try to answer your question, I'll give you another example. Seattle Public Schools anti-racism training for elementary teachers. This is in 2021. By the way, anti-racism is explicitly based on CRT. Seattle Public Schools required elementary school teachers to undergo anti-racism training that included materials on decentering whiteness and analyzing systemic racism in education. I don't know if we need to go into Paulo Freire, who was the author of Critical Pedagogy, again, a disciple of Marx. His disciple, Henry Giroux, had a claim to fame that he had established 100 educators that were indoctrinated in Marxism. This also is a through line to critical race theory in BLM. This training module was for K-5 educators and encouraged the teachers to discuss white supremacy culture and its impact on classroom dynamics using frameworks adapted from CRT. Again, if you're steeping your educators in CRT, they're obviously going to pass that into the classroom, and they explicitly have done, as referenced in the Buffalo example, or if you want another example that I can provide now.
Well, I mean, you might as well. Got plenty to say on that, but go ahead. Yeah, what's your other one?
I've got more examples. I mean, if you want to stop here while we're talking about this one, please.
Well, no, I mean, it's what you're describing is people who are already college educated learning CRT, and that's fine. I mean, I don't know how you pass that through to a kindergartner. I don't think that's possible. They can't understand these concepts.
Maybe it's by separating themselves into categories of racial privilege.
What do you mean, maybe?
In a tongue-in-cheek use of the word maybe. I think educators that are trained in CRT express that in the classroom by making their students separate themselves into racial categories.
Okay, well that's fine. I'm still not seeing the direct line. I don't see how that's CRT. Kids understanding that different people are different isn't critical race theory. It's just, I mean,
well, no, it's not them saying separate yourselves into people who are left-handed or people who are right-handed. It is explicitly with reference to racial, quote-unquote, privilege or distinction.
Right, but I don't think anybody would see a problem with left-handed and right-handed people being in groups. Is that a problem?
I suppose this is great. Actually, you've stumbled upon a question I never even bothered to consider, which is there a critical Marxist theory about hand dominance? And if there isn't, I think it's only a matter of time, probably.
New pride process flag.
Oh my God. All right, never mind. We'll leave that till the next round.
Left-handed tri-dick. Cut that out.
No, I will not. I was thinking about this earlier. I was going to say on this episode that I've been really impressed with the fact that we have not that much leaned on the crutch of dick jokes, but the last couple of rounds it's been getting more and more frequent, so I'm not sure that I can even say that anymore.
We're getting into our own here.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I don't care if anybody else finds it funny. I will always laugh at a good dick joke, so bring it on. That's great.
Totally agree. Tier 1 humor, but it'll always get me.
That's right. Critical dick humor theory is going to be the next discipline that we teach in college level legal studies. Moderator, reel me back in. I've lost the plot here.
We're so far off.
So Steve was talking about you were talking about having kids being separated upon in groups of racial privilege or like classification right there. And, Steve had said something to the effect that like acknowledging differences between people isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's a fact of life that we're not all the same. And he was saying, what's the harm in that? That's what I was getting out of that. And you had started talking about left hand and right hand.
Yeah, I guess either the gin is potent or this conversation is so complex and spiraling that it's easy to get spun around. But I think the only point I was trying to make was that it is explicitly based on critical race theory, these lessons. And again, the curriculum itself per se was derived from CRT. So, if you're going to send your educators, let's say, to a Christian university, and those educators are then going to go into public school, I think there's a fair argument to be made that progressives would probably object to any bearing from that Christian education manifesting in the classroom. Here's another analogy. Steve, since you're our resident progressive for the evening, would you object to the 10 Commandments being posted on the wall of a schoolroom?
No, I wouldn't.
No, as our resident progressive.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't. You should have other tenants up there too, but no, I wouldn't object to that.
Okay, let's say there are no other tenants.
If that's the only one, then yes.
Okay. As the resident progressive, would you object to religious philosophy being in public school generally?
Well, generally, no.
You're not a separation of church and state kind of progressive then?
No. Provided you're covering all the bases, no, I wouldn't object to that. If you're going to do Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, then that's fine. It can't just be one. Separation of church and state, it means there can't be one religion. You understand this. Come on.
Fuck, I popped a can that's way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. Okay, bad analogy, but let me not address this to you. Let me not address this to you specifically, okay? Because I'm sorry, but you're being a bad leftist right now. Yeah, you are, okay? You are. Moderator, back me up on this.
He won't.
I have to remain impartial.
That's because he's a good moderator. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, everybody gets their panties in a twist if there's any kind of suggestion of specifically Christianity or Judaism in classrooms, because everybody wants to say there should be a separation of church and state. Probably all three of us on this call, when we're not occupying our progressive roles or our moderator roles, whatever, understand that the Constitution actually doesn't make that distinction between church and state as it was conceived of by the founders. But the point is that the 10 Commandments, as an example, being posted in a schoolroom, which has drawn the ire of progressives, is analogous to this idea that there are concepts of critical race theory being exercised in classrooms, and yet they don't raise the same kind of protestations. So that's the only point that I'm trying to draw with this analogy. I don't know if that's helpful to the conversation or the question that you asked me, Steve, but maybe you could help me reframe if it wasn't.
No, I maintain, I think the problem is when the 10 Commandments is the only thing on the wall. There should be multiple. If you're going to post that, you need to post all of them.
So I think you're okay. So you're within the analogy that I proposed. You're trying to reframe, and I see what you're saying. When, for example, here's my third example I have for you guys. Evanston Skokie, in Illinois, from 2019 to 2021. Here again, this is pre-George Floyd, so this is an example of something that preceded the extraordinary proliferation of BLM. From kindergarten to 5th grade, they implemented a curriculum called Racial and Ethnic Identity, which included lessons for primary students on whiteness and privilege, both in quotes, those words. Kindergarten and 1st grade students were taught to recognize their racial identity and understand how systems of power, again, everything in quotes right now is ripped straight from Black Lives Matter and critical race theory literature, affect different groups. Materials included books like Not My Idea, a book about whiteness, which introduces concepts of systemic racism and white privilege, adapted from CRT scholar Cheryl Harris. So children were taught to recognize their racial identity. So I suppose what you would say is, well, if children are ever asked to line up in order of height or alphabetized by last name, that's a countervailing example of being segregated that would negate the problematic nature of being taught to separate into racial identities. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Counter it.
I won't, because it counters itself. I've got more examples. Should we keep going? I mean,
No,
this
I mean, I think we're
explicitly.
running in. No, I think we're going to run in circles here. I mean, I still think they're at best they're learning fundamentals. I mean, this isn't
Fundamentals of
what you're calling critical race theory.
no. What
I
Kimberly
mean, I think
Crenshaw,
most peop-
the creator
no,
of
I mean,
critical
most
race
people-
theory, calls critical race theory.
No, it's identifying race is not critical race theory. Like understanding that there are different cultures is not critical race theory.
Yeah, they're not saying, "Hey Susie, you're white," and "Hey Jimmy, you're black." Okay, lesson over. They're saying, "Susie, you're problematic because you're white, and you've oppressed Jimmy because he's black." That's a fundamentally different thing.
I don't know that they're calling out kids. I haven't seen examples of this.
Well, that's what I just said.
Understanding that
the students were taught to
historically,
recognize their racial privilege.
Well, historically, it's been a problem.
So they
In America,
are or are
how
not
do you
doing
even-
it.
How do you teach history in America? How do you teach history anywhere without identifying race and differences?
Yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't teach racial history per se. That's not the question. The question is critical race theory in schools? And it demonstrably is, because the curriculum specifically cites critical race theory.
Well, simply because it cites it doesn't make it that. I mean, you can cite all kinds of stuff for math or science. I mean, bringing the kid to the zoo doesn't make him a zoologist, right? Well, you
Yeah, we're
can
not
teach a
saying
kid what a monkey is without teaching him how it works, right? Without teaching evolution, without teaching all kinds of stuff.
Johnny, do you want more examples? I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I think we're tapped out on example. Look, we all got it, right? We understand where you're at. Unless you have something damning where there's a class in kindergarten that's called CRT and they're teaching intersectionality.
I would have thought that the curriculum called racial and ethnic identity would have been pretty close to that.
It's not.
Moderator, help us.
I am going to say Benny. So let's just say that the examples that you're saying are valid right here. What's the harm in those being taught in school if we're basically trying to learn about about race, about racial injustices and things like that? Well, what's the problem with that being taught in schools as part of an education program? Like, what's the damning part about that? If it's not just that people have a better understanding of, the past.
A just question, my liege.
Not to unmoderate the moderator, but the question is not whether it's just or problematic, but the question is critical race theories in school? So just having pointed that out, I'll answer your question, which is fine. First of all, if we give any weight or value to the statement by Martin Luther King Jr. that we should be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin, I think it's self-demonstrably problematic. Secondly, are these children that are being compelled to separate themselves into racial and oppressor-oppressed categories in any way responsible for crimes historically 100 to 200 to 300 years ago of people that they've never met and are probably not even related to? That's the problem. How could we be compelled to think of ourselves in categories of oppressor oppressed when we have no direct linkage to these people that did the oppressing or were the oppressed? It's a fundamentally incorrect assumption that any of this should be projected onto our children or indoctrinated into them. I'll give you an example that's personal. My immediate forebears, I'm a second generation American. My people were in Europe getting kicked in the teeth by Germans, while critical race stuff was happening, 200 to 200, 300 years ago. There's nothing that links me to anything that happened in the quote unquote colonial racist history of America. So that's probably true for a majority of the children that are in these public schools. That should be self-demonstrably problematic and damaging to those children.
Steve, you want to counter that?
I mean, my counter to that is, how would you fix past injustices? I mean, injustice was done. I mean, whether you're a part of it or not, how do you fix past injustices without holding someone to account?
By recognizing that the injustice was done.
See that? I mean, if I steal a bunch of stuff from you and I apologize, it doesn't fix it.
Right, but you committed that crime. What I'm saying is that the people who are being exposed to these CRT public school programs are not the perpetrators of those crimes. They are.
No, I understand, but I don't think a satisfactory answer to destroying generations of an entire race is just like, well, I'm sorry, but they're all dead.
So the answer would be to scapegoat fifth graders.
And we're kind of getting off topic here. Right, but I mean, we were talking about racial injustice, but we're getting a little off topic. But it should be understood by every generation moving forward that it was done, at least in a fundamental sense, that it was done, and we shouldn't do it again.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like that's implicit in, look, again, this is anecdotal and based just on my experience, but I learned about the injustices of slavery in America, which, by the way, was established under British colonial rule. It's not even really an American tradition. In fact, it was the Americans that abolished slavery that was inherited by the UK, or the British rather. So, this is a separate question, but the point is that all three of us, we studied this. We have not been passed over in terms of learning about the injustices, racial or otherwise, of the institution of slavery in America. Probably what we haven't been exposed to is the true expanse of institutional slavery across the world, right? It's very focused on American slavery, but we've all experienced and been educated in that. So there's no part of me or my argument that's saying people shouldn't learn about what happened from, if you want to use the Nicole Hannah Jones, 1619, up until 1865 or thereabouts, when slavery was eradicated, at least in principle. That's fine.
Sure.
We should all learn about
racism carried on way longer than that, and I think we can all agree it's still alive.
And always will be.
And always will be.
Yep. But that's not the question. The question is critical race theory in schools?
Right. And like I said, we're getting kind of off topic here. No, I maintain it. I think fundamentals are being taught, maybe fundamentals of CRT, but as you're describing it, it's such a broad umbrella that how would you even take what you're calling CRT out of schools without not learning history?
Again, it's not what I'm calling CRT. It's what the founder of CRT is calling CRT.
Well, that's fine, but how do you do that?
By not teaching it.
By not teaching what? By not teaching about slavery? By not teaching about racial segregation?
History is not CRT.
Is racial segregation a part of CRT? Because I think it is.
Steve, let me ask you a question. Do you think it's right or wrong for children to be lined up in groups based off of the sins of their ancestors?
I mean, it's hard for me to put a finger on that because I don't know exactly the situation. But I mean, I think generally understanding what we're calling your race has done in the past, that's probably generally fundamentally a good thing to understand that this is a bad thing and you shouldn't do it again. And these are the people they oppressed. It gives them a solid it gives them a solid grasp on what it really meant to be racially segregated. I mean, even as late as the 70s, 80s in America.
Benny?
Gives them a grasp in what sense?
It gives them a visual representation, a solid visual representation of what it meant to be segregated.
I feel like we're conflating an education about history with a spun political, explicitly Marxist history and education. So, we could say, redlining happened, and that's fine. It did. Right. Or, and this is the CRT in schools aspect of it, we could say redlining happened and you, little Peggy, 9 years old, you're responsible for it. Right. That's the difference.
That sounds crazy. Show me.
Solidify your case, Ben. I mean,
show me the example.
The more examples you can give of all this stuff happening, I think it gives you a better case for CRT being in schools.
So just by way of saying, the premise for tonight's round was CRT is not in schools. Okay, so let me draw particular attention to the language saying that schools is plural. I've already cited 3 schools in which CRT was demonstrably, explicitly a part of their curriculum or their education. Okay, so I've already made my case, but I'm happy to keep compounding it because there are myriad examples. Here's another one. Slinger School District Equity Training and Curriculum Guidelines from 2021. This is Wisconsin, by the way. Wisconsin, which is essentially the birthplace of CRT. A whistleblower teacher, Robin Hora, proposed mandatory equity training for K through 12 educators, including primary school teachers, that instructed them to treat students differently based on race to address systemic inequities. The training, part of the district's curriculum guidelines, in that district, encouraged lessons on implicit bias and racial equity for elementary school students, using materials that framed American institutions as inherently biased for race.
Is this all?
Well, no, I have more examples, but for that one, yes.
Okay, so provided that is CRT, and to your point, it sounds like it. It's still, at best, that's a one-off. I mean, unless you have widespread examples of this, it's a country of 330 million people. One town in Wisconsin where there's a rogue staff that's teaching this stuff it's not a widespread thing in America.
The question is not whether it's widespread. The question is it in schools? That was my fourth example.
Okay, so it's a school. I mean,
that was my fourth example.
Okay. I mean, you could find a one-off example of anything in a country of 330 million people.
A four-off, you mean?
A four-off. How many schools are in America?
I have more. We could do this all night. I mean, the thing is, when the progressives say critical race theory is not in schools, that's an extraordinarily condensed statement. It means that it is not in any schools. I've already given you 4.
Well, I mean, we're kind of inflating this to a point where there's a national emergency for this. I mean, what is this as a percentage of school? 0.0004? I mean, that's a statistical rounding error.
I'm not inflating it at all. In fact, I'm making the opposite argument. I'm saying that the only threshold I have to exceed is that is in any schools. 2 would qualify as a victory for me in this particular debate. I've already given 4. If any student, K through 12 or otherwise, is being exposed to this nonsense, that is egregious, it is inexcusable, it is problematic, it is wrong, it is against everything that Americans stand for.
I don't know that you win that in a court of law.
We're not doing legal studies right now. I'm just saying it's in public schools explicitly.
I think that we've kind of made is the most points we're going to make here, and I think we should probably move towards closing statements here. As I think the round has gone at least half hour.
At least, emphasis on at least. That was like 40 minutes.
So at least in closing to me, CRT. Go ahead. No, I'm doing it.
Progressives always have the last word.
No, I don't care. I'm taking it. CRT to me is
anarchist.
It's way overblown as far as being taught widespread and kids. Okay, so we may have proved 4 examples. I don't even know if these are accurate. So we may have proved 4 examples out of 16 million schools in the country. It's not a case for national concern or to the point that we need to ban it through Congress. It seems like absolute overkill. I mean, we've got Congress in session to ban this stuff, and the problem with that being, if you ban CRT, the label is so broad. How do you teach anything about race? How do you teach anything about history? So it's not a concept that can be grasped by children, even if they try. In this alleged case in Wisconsin, as he's calling it, by and large, it's a statistical rounding error, if indeed it is at all in schools. To you,
I wasn't even making the case that it should be banned, although constitutionally it is in violation.
We are doing that.
Huh?
But we are doing that. States are convening and banning CRTs in schools.
And other states are fighting against those bans, so I mean, I'm not sure we want to get bogged down in that argument right now, but that's not the argument. The argument is that it is in schools, and it is demonstrably, like explicitly, by the admission of the administrators that are implementing the curricula. So that is not even a question that is unresolved at this point. In fact, it was resolved by my first example. Technically my second example, because it is schools, right, plural. But the point is that anytime we want to try and introduce racializing curricula, education, lessons, whatever you'd like to call it, in public schools particularly, because private schools have leeway to do things differently if they want to. And I'm not even expressing that at this point. But when the progressives say that CRT is not in schools, verbatim, they're clearly wrong. There are multiple examples, many examples, where CRT and CRT concepts, as you would call them, building blocks, are in schools. And what are building blocks, if not foundational components that are leading to a CRT understanding of the world? To go back to my previous example, where I said that Herbert Marcuse basically mentored Angela Davis, who mentored or at least influenced Kimberly Crenshaw, who created CRT. There are these ripple effects, these lines, these cascades of these ideas, and they go down. And so if we're talking about Paulo Freire, the Brazilian critical Marxist educator, influencing Henry Giroux, who then went on to establish as his life goal the propagation of these ideas into educators explicitly in North America, and celebrated his own success in, this is a word that I would use editorially, contaminating North American educators in critical pedagogy. Obviously, the point is to establish these educators in a specific line of thinking to indoctrinate students when they're in the classroom under the tutelage of these educators. This is what we're talking about. Critical race theory, especially post 2022. And yes, I'll admit, Steve, as you noted, that it is sort of scaling off a little bit. But over the past 5 years, critical race theory has been, at least in some schools, which again, the contention is it's not in any schools, it is in some schools. Critical race theory is being introduced as a pillar of education where teachers are trying to institutionalize or indoctrinate children with these ideas from critical race theory.
All right, well, closing statement.
How do you dab? Is that how does dabbing work? I don't know.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Wow.
Oh, not into it.
All right, so we can look forward to nobody emailing us to vote on who won that debate.
That's fine.
Do we need to start a new wheel that just has our names on it and we spin it around randomly who won?
That'd be as good as our
again.
yeah, it'd be as good as our current system.
Hardly matters.
That was well done, guys.
Hardly matters. I mean, this is really just an exercise in self-betterment, right?
Exactly.
Johnny, you did a great job moderating. Thank you for holding me to account on things and trying to encourage both of us to expand our ideas and what we're saying. And Steve, like I said, I really did appreciate the hand washing analogy. I thought that was pretty clever.
I thought that was great. I was going to say something right off the bat when you first said it, but I was going to hold my comment till after the debate. That was really good.
Yeah. And I think I'm shocked at how well you did standing up against what I think was a not very good onslaught from me about this concept, because to be honest, look,
dude, I don't agree at all.
I don't agree at all either.
Well, look, I appreciate it, but let me finish my thought. I've listened, like I said, Steve, I'd be really interested to hear more about this, because you have said that, well, I'm not gonna paraphrase your language because I want you to be honest about it, but you've expressed some opinions about James Lindsay that are contrary to mine. And so I'm interested to hear more about that. But I have listened to so many hours of James Lindsay talking about this subject, and then he spins it off into how it's all based on Marxist alchemy. And I mean literal alchemy. Like, Marx was influenced by Hegel, who was like a literal alchemist. And so it's about looking at the world as if there are seeds of an idea inside everything that can be nurtured to blossom into like a lead to gold thing, literally. Okay, so my brain's like,
yeah,
right now. And so I did not articulate or express ideas as clearly and concisely as I really wanted to for this debate. But with all that being said, I cannot believe how well you stood up to it on the progressive side.
If you say so.
Yeah,
Johnny
dude,
said so.
Honestly, dude, I thought you were gonna get steamrolled right from the beginning. Benny, you did a tremendous job with the research and formulating a really, really cohesive argument right there. But Steve, I think is with the odds stacked against you. I mean, I think you did about as good as anybody could have done trying to defend that. I mean, even though I know where you stand on the subject personally, and then just some of the stuff that you were able to kind of stonewall Ben with, I could see it a couple times where you said a few things that did stop Benny in his tracks and make him kind of reposition his argument right there. I thought both sides did a really, really good job.
Best I could do is try to stay alive. I mean, everybody knows
you were hanging in there. You were throwing some jabs that had some salt on it. You know what I mean? Knocked Benny's head back a little bit, but I think I think Benny did his homework with all the research. And I saw what you were talking about towards the end, where you were trying to say, like, well, yeah, maybe it is in some schools, but like when we're talking about is CRT in schools, you could in theory interpret that, is this like nationwide in schools, not just in one school, you know what I mean? And then Benny, I see where you're talking about, we didn't really clarify the argument that, is it in any schools, or is it like, when we say, is it in schools on like a nationwide level? So I think that you guys are arguing from kind of two different points on that end. So, I think depending on what definition we want to take on that, I think you can say, either if it was just in any school, Benny, you won. I think if it was in, nationwide, then I think Steve might have a leg to stand on in that one, but we would have to find out how many other examples that Benny still had left to give us to make that determination.
Infinity. By the way, yeah, it's a great point. And so I want to give credit to Steve because at the end of the day, I feel like all three of us on this podcast are the scrappers, and so Steve, what I recognize and I appreciate your survival instinct to twist the conversation to try and say, hey, well, it's not national, so it must not be in schools. But the thing is that when we express this idea from the progressive view, what they're saying is CRT is not in any school, period. Right. And so I think it was, again, you've pulled this maneuver on me before, which I think is great. It's like you're trying to twist the language of the concept of the idea to try and get some leverage. That's not really the progressive expression, but I think it does make for very interesting debate because it gave you.
One of the basic tenets is twisting definitions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. That's crazy. I never stopped to consider that during a debate where you're trying to represent a leftist position, you could use leftist tactics. I never even thought about
without
that.
giving away my secret sauce, it looks like I'm going to be on the left for the foreseeable future. So
that's just it's a moving of the goalposts. That's the play, the number one play.
What does that say about progressives in the left?
Is that they don't really have a solid argument, I think, because if you have to keep changing the definitions, then you're really not there's no foundation to the argument you're trying to make. Anything is a means to an end and nothing else. Any way you have to get there is how you get there. Right. It's the proverbial stapling Jello to the wall.
Uh-huh.
I have a friend. All right, so it's a husband and wife, okay? And we have political debates sometimes. And so I'm not going to use names in order to protect the guilty, let's say. But basically, the wife survives, the husband passed away, and the wife loves to come to me and say, my husband was a Republican, but today's Republican Party is not his Republican Party of 20, 30 years ago. And I say, what is different about the Republican platform 30 years to today? Were Republicans
Republican or MAGA?
Just Republican. So, yeah, I think maybe, Johnny, the point you're making is that Republicans today are way more progressive than they were 30 years ago. For example.
Totally agree.
By the way,
Republicans today are Democrats 1990.
Yeah, exactly.
Not MAGA,
yeah.
Which is something else.
MAGA is something else, right? We all understand that. But yes, exactly. And so Republicans have gotten more progressive, regrettably.
Way more progressive.
Well, do you think that's do you think that's an appeal to fan base or to voter base right there?
No, it's exactly what you were just saying. Is the shifting goalpost argument is that people love to say old Republicans were so good. Right? Old Republicans had principles. Old Republicans were normal, reasonable, but did Republicans fundamentally shift their opinion on social issues like gay marriage or, for example, fiscal conservatism or anything that you can name? No, it's the progressives, the Democrats that have gone extraordinarily to the left to the point where they would be unrecognizable in some sense, Republicans would be unrecognizable to Republicans for 40 years ago. Fine, granted, but not to the extent that Democrats have shifted left. Lighting up the White House in rainbow colors under Barack Obama. Would a bunch of gay stomping, black lynching Democrats have been cool with that? I'm sorry, I don't see it.
Or even Bill Clinton.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, again, I hate to always say this, but the three of us on this podcast, we understand that Donald Trump was actually the first president to come into office with a pro-gay marriage stance. What are we talking about? It's just absolutely insane. Anyway.
He's no Republican.
Well,
he's got an R next to his name. He's not a Republican.
Fair enough, yeah. But again, the point borne out is that, when liberals come and say, oh, Republicans used to be principled, blah, blah, blah. If anything, we've become more progressive. And the progressive have become, what would you call it?
Who even knows? Like, when did we expect progressives to be pro-war?
Dude, that's crazy. I mean, yeah, you look at like, and they become like corporatists, like crony corporatists that like a lot of the Republicans from, decades past were.
Yeah.
They're no longer for the working man and everything like that.
Oh, sucking big pharma dick? These people are the professionals. They're the scientists. You need to believe them and purchase their product.
Not when it comes to what a woman is.
I don't know, guys. I mean,
are we spinning that wheel?
Yeah, I was just gonna say we've come to a point where we're just like regressing into a spiral, which is fine because there is a spiral to be regressed into. But we should probably do.
We sharing this bad boy?
Yeah, share it. Share the bad boy. Tell him how bad he is.
Fucking bad wheel.
Spank him on his spinner wheel.
You guys are embarrassing.
This is full screen, right?
Good job, Johnny. There you go. Our moderator has shared the spinning wheel. Now, moderator's going to spin it.
All right, moderator spinning the wheel now.
I'm so excited.
No whammies, no whammies, no whammies.
Stop. This is a good one. Mr. Moderator?
A hard one to freaking defend from the right side.
Announce it, buddy.
America is stolen land.
I think we could also extrapolate that to North America generally, but I'll leave that up to you guys if you want. By the way, let's go ahead and announce our roles for the next round. I will be moderating.
I will be on the right side.
And again, I will be on the left.
Yeah, but you got some serious ammunition on this one, though.
Look, I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale, but I think you both could make really good cases. Steve, I think it's apropos or appropriate, per se, that you should continue to be getting the left positions because you're a filthy, disgusting anarchist. So that's fine with me.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I mean, I could make the argument that anarchy is the furthest thing from the left, but that's fine.
You could, but I'll argue against it and slap you down as usual.
But is it so far right that it's left?
You'll actually lose on that.
Oh,
you good with me sharing the screen?
We should add it to the wheel. Yes, Johnny, go ahead. All right. So as moderator, our next round topic will be America, i.e. North America, is stolen land. Johnny to defend the right position. Steve to defend the left position on that. Wow. We're deep into this podcast tonight, boys.
Deep into this one.
Yeah, I don't even know. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to comment because I recently posted to our Instagram account a clip where I was going through my projection of round length. And Johnny, you were very skeptical about my idea that it was going to increase arithmetically in length every time we did a round. But here we are at 1 hour and 40 minutes. And
yeah.
You were talking about outliers.
20 minutes late.
So
wasn't your projection like 56 hours or something like that?
By round 5, yeah, probably. Actually, it was really funny because Steve, you were like, by round 20, we're going to have a 2-year-long podcast. That was like, you just said that, but that was like basically in line with the math that we were looking at. So as usual, your genius shone through.
I was going to say, Steve doesn't show up to math class and knows how to do freaking trigonometry.
Amazing.
S-tier estimator.
Really good estimation.
That's got to be your next name on there under Steve Trainwreck.
S-tier estimator. S-timator.
Yeah.
All right. We're at the point by which we do the roundup.
Yeah.
/ outro. So
I want to hear what you have to say on Letitia James.
I haven't heard anything recently. So I was actually hoping that you guys might have something to share with me, but I have not heard any news.
All I can tell you is that no one is above the law. No one is above the law.
Well done, Johnny. I think that's all that needs to be said about that, actually.
I think so.
No one is above the law.
Yeah, so, Steve, when you asked me that question, I could tell you had actually glanced at the outline at least. And so, a couple of rounds ago, we were talking about Elon Musk, and we got a little bit into like this was a while ago, but we got into the presidential address to Congress, and we were talking about tariffs and things like that. I wanted to drill down into, Steve, your opinion, some things you've expressed to us personally about Elon Musk that I was wondering if you're willing to share with the universe generally, even at risk of being confined to the desktop trash bin of the Elon generated simulation that we're living inside of right now.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'll throw it out there. For what it's worth, at this point, I'm loving the ride. He's a really interesting guy. He's clearly a really smart guy. He's very entertaining, and I think, generally speaking, he's doing some pretty good things for the country.
Johnny, correct me. I'm sorry, Steve, if you were not done, but Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong. Steve literally said Elon Musk is a literal demon.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where I was going with this.
I remember the word antichrist being in there.
Yeah.
Antichrist, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I was asking if my assessment up until that point was correct. That said, yeah, I think if the antichrist is roaming this world right now, I think it's Elon Musk. And I have supporting information on this. So the antichrist will be someone who is universally liked, right? He's going to be somebody that it is what it is. He's going to be somebody that has the power to change the world. He has all of these things. He's got the power to change the world. And the thing I can't square with him is this transhuman thing, these cyber augmentations, people becoming computers and stuff like that. I think that if implemented, that could be the most dangerous thing to the human race ever. If you just want to be a regular human being, how do you compete with somebody that's got a brain augmentation that makes them 1,000 times smarter?
You don't.
You can't.
Or cybernetic augmentations,
where you can lift 16 million pounds. How do you compete with that as just a guy who was born, right, and didn't want to get his arms replaced, right? I think that's way worse than chopping your dick off and claiming you're a woman.
I have an answer to that question. UBI is how they'll do it.
That's no way to live, dude.
I'm not familiar with what UBI is.
Universal Basic Income.
Oh,
that's no way to live.
That's like the Yang Gang's whole answer to the like, God, how do we deal with being outsourced and like having AI come in? Oh, we just get money from the government.
And by the way, I think Andrew Yang is a total piece of shit, but I think he's extremely prescient on that. I think we are moving toward that, and it's going to happen.
I agree, but the question is whether it's good or bad or a practical solution to a real problem. Yeah, no, for sure.
It's terrible. It's a terrible thing.
No, I agree. I think it is
for society, for people.
Yeah,
it's going to be the only way, though. You can't compete with this stuff. You can't compete. I mean, even short cybernetically augmented people, just robots in warehouses, right? Like, I don't know if you guys saw this new Ford factory. Like, they toured the Ford factory, and it's just like a bunch of robots roaming around bashing into each other. Right? Like, we're not creating jobs with this stuff. Everybody's like, oh, manufacturing is going to come back to America. There's going to be 50 million jobs. Like, are you sure about that? Are there 50 million people that want to work in manufacturing?
Yeah.
Can we come up with that?
Yeah.
I don't think so, man. I think it's just going to be robots bashing into each other and like two guys with sticks that pry them apart every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about this a couple of rounds ago, maybe last round. Time is a human construct that makes no sense, but I find it very like, this is a whole different tangent, but what the fuck is Trump doing right now? What the fuck is Trump doing right now? Anybody?
I'm removing myself from this. I'm going to restate a prior opinion that I've had, maybe not on this podcast, but certainly with you guys, where I am of the political persuasion that every politician should be placed on trial for treason. Every single one of them. That's all I have to say about that.
Johnny, you haven't said anything in a bit.
No, I don't really have anything to. I mean, I agree with Steve. Maybe not every single one. I mean, I think the more I learn about politicians, the more I'd agree with that. But I did hear an interesting bit of information this morning or this afternoon when I was running off a misload. We are actually getting to a point where, like, during the Biden administration, we were hemorrhaging $5 billion a day from the deficit, and we're actually we're getting more money in through tariffs right now than they ever thought that we would right now, and it's actually getting to a point where we're actually almost not even hemorrhaging any money per day right now. It's very, very minimal. I don't know if you guys had heard anything about that.
Where'd you hear that?
I was listening to I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember what it was. I'd have to go through there, but it was Trump talking about it. It was an interview. Him talking about I think they were forecasting like 500 to 900 billion or something like that. I don't know. It was I think they're trying to get 500 to 900 billion to come off of the deficit, and they're getting like 10 times that or something like that. I don't know the exact statistic. It's getting to a point where he's able to start pumping the brakes a little bit on the deficit every day with the tariffs that are coming in.
He also said we had He also said Israelis had a 35% tariff on us, which was complete bullshit. I'm very skeptical of what Trump says.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. What I will say is that it appears to be extremely ham-handed in his approach. There doesn't seem to be any structure to what he's doing. I don't know what's going on. I mean, it went from a global trade war to we're dropping everything and tariffing China at like 6 million% or something like that. I mean, it's just like an extremely ham-handed approach. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm not one of these 4D chess types where I think he's like so far ahead of everyone else that everything's incredible. But
yeah, to me, it's just so frustrating. Like, and it's not just the
love
tariffs, right? It's Ukraine, Russia, it's the conflagration in the Middle East, it's everything. Like, we, not just the three of us on this podcast, but Americans generally, because Trump did win, we voted for him because we thought he had learned the lessons of his first administration, that he had a plan, and that he could articulate and execute a solid strategy for conservatism going forward. Steve shaking his head. Does that mean you didn't think that? So why did you vote for Trump?
Because the people that I hate the most in this world hate him.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that so right. Like, this is the thing, like, everybody has a personal approach to politics, in my experience. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, people on the left progressive side say, well, Trump is stupid, like he's mean, he's ugly, like he doesn't say things in a polite way, blah blah blah, like whatever. It's very emotional, right? But like, you could also point to examples of the same from the progressive left side, right? Like, so Joe Biden would insult people who were at his rallies or interviews. Like, he was a very sort of, like, in different ways, callous person. He was kind of an ugly person. He's a very stupid person, I think, in a lot of ways. And so the conclusion that I've arrived at is that the only thing that matters is policy. That's it. Like, does the policy advance American interest? Advance the interests of American taxpayers, American citizens? Like, Trump had a layup where he had like a policy direction that if he just went in and executed it in the way that Americans wanted him to do, that they voted for him to do, like, he could have carried the standard forward for conservatism and Republicans generally and done a really good job and been successful. And he's just been like, fuck it, I'm going to piss all over everything. Like, it's just been horrible. And like, it would have been the easiest thing in the world for him to just not hand victory after victory after victory, rhetorical or otherwise, to the left at this point. But he just loves, apparently, handing these victories to the left. I don't know what to do about this. Like, I feel like an idiot. Yes, I still believe Harris Waltz would have been worse because their policies were worse. But like, Trump could have easily just done like a clear run to the basket and dunked the ball. And he's just like trying to do globetrotter shit, but he's missing an arm and like he has cardiopulmonary disease and he's just a fucking idiot. What's happening right now? I don't understand.
I mean, I will say in his defense, it's been like 3 months and we've got a long way to go.
It's only been 100 days. Like, I mean, I agree with you, Benny, but like, I mean, I feel like there's time to execute some of that stuff.
And I'm not one to defend politicians.
Don't feel like Joe Biden fucked up this much within the first 3 months. Like, I hate Joe Biden. I don't feel like he fucked up this much in the first 3 months.
Joe Biden didn't do anything in the first 3 months.
Okay, fine. Well,
so how do you fuck something up if you're not doing anything?
He triggered the Russia invasion of Ukraine. I guess that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing was set to go, right? They were just waiting for a loser.
Yeah.
We just got to wait till there's a loser in power in America and we'll go invade.
That's true, but still.
Now that they're winning, we're trying to end the war. Like, how do you convince Russia to stop winning a war? Like, we're winning it. What do you have to offer us, right? How do you convince them? I mean, like, Vladimir Putin, for all his faults, he's not a little bitch, right?
He has an idea of the world that he wants to try and achieve. He's ambitious. He's driven. He's ruthless, right? Like, it's just like all the advertising Trump did for his solved in a day policy. Like, nobody believed that was really going to be the case, but it's just like, he has nothing to bring to this table, apparently. And even worse, it seems like he's being counterproductive at this point, which is really, really frustrating.
I mean, it seems to me that the stick in the spokes is Zelensky. I think there could be a deal. I don't think Russia wants to keep sending guys into the meat grinder, even if it's minimal. I don't think they want to keep doing that.
That is like in the Russian constitution. Like that's all they do. Like, have you heard of World War II? It's like all they do.
I gotta think they're done with that, right? I mean, World War II was generations ago. You're right. That's kind of their MO.
That is their MO. That is
They
like
sent their
the
women off to
Russian
war
identity.
in World War II.
What's that, Johnny?
I said they sent their women off to war in World War II.
Yeah, I guess maybe ostensibly, I don't know, but at least I don't think they're doing that right now. I guess that's a step in the right direction.
No, I don't think so. I'm just saying, like, I'm saying those guys are crazy. They'll do anything. So.
Oh my God. All right. At risk of letting this conversation spiral further, because we're at almost 2 hours, which is OSAS first, amazingly. Have you guys heard of prostaglandins?
Yes.
No.
I don't know why I put this on the outline, but we've been talking about dad stuff. And so the last thing I wanted to say is I became a real believer in quote unquote the patriarchy. So Steve, you haven't heard of prostaglandins, but when we, my wife and I were reaching the end of our pregnancy term, we'd go into the OBGYN and they'd say, hey, here's your baby's due date. But if the baby doesn't come on that date or before, there are a couple of things we can do. Basically, nothing works. Like all the wives' tales or whatever, like you can't do exercise to get your baby to come. You can't, take certain supplements to get delivery to come. The only thing that you can do is have sex. Because there are these things that are in sperm called prostaglandins. Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are amino chains or proteins of some kind. Does that sound right?
Yeah, probably.
So they have an enzyme in them.
Enzymes are proteins. So
there are these chemical compounds inside these proteins that have a effect on the cellulose matrix of the uterus or something like that. And basically they can trigger contractions to begin in the uterus. And I was like, wow. So a husband who's gone like ostensibly 9 months without sex creates a medical system whereby obstetricians tell pregnant women that the only way they can get their baby to come is by having sex with their sex-deprived husband. It's like, okay, maybe there is something to this patriarchy idea. I could see it.
That's a nice setup.
Steve's not convinced apparently, but this apparently is a real thing. Like our female obstetrician told us that this was the case.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. It says its role in reproductives are crucial for regulating the menstrual cycle, inducing labor, and regulating ovulation.
Yep. It's all in the sperm,
Good
bro.
information. Thanks, guys.
All the power in the world is in the squiggly wigglies there. Guys, anything else? Because otherwise I think we've gone way long, and my wife is mad because I'm supposed to be on baby duty right now as of half an hour ago.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple things, but we can do it later. It's no big deal. I'll save it till next time.
Please write it down, Steve. Bring it to the next round.
Yeah.
Like this was a crazy topic. Like, sorry, Johnny?
I said it's all up here.
That's all of it. This was a crazy topic. Like, I feel like we got spun out quite a bit. We talked about a lot of different material. There's more that we didn't get to that I think we probably all wanted to get to. But that being said, maybe we're ready for conclusions. And so I'll leave it to our moderator to begin the outros.
Joe Nathan, Angle of the Dangle, signing out.
Steve, absolute train wreck. I'm out.
Why'd you call yourself a train wreck, by the way?
Because I am a train wreck.
Johnny, what's the dangle about your angle?
The angle of the dangle, right? The degree of the boner.
Oh. And then the next part
increases with the heat of the meat.
The heat of the meat, right? My name is Ben Tomzak, Chung Chung Magitech Armor. I'll talk to you guys next time, and we love you all. Please, by the way, I keep forgetting to do this. Fucking email us at upstrongsteel@gmail.com. We're on Instagram. Steve is our X-Man. Steve, what's up with X lately? Have you been doing anything?
Yeah, I posted a couple times.
Yeah, Steve's got some good shit.
I reposted that clip you sent.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's on there.
So there's a little bit of a clip from our Instagram page on Steve's managed X account for Upstrong Steel, but we'd love to hear from anybody. And I suck at social media, so I need to try and pick up the game a little bit. But Steve, thanks for doing the X. Johnny, thanks for just working your fucking ass off, for doing your job and coming and bringing the moderating skills. And I'm looking forward to watching you roast Steve on our next round. So
it shall be done.
Steve looks devastated. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks, guys.
Night.
Good night, boys.